Title: Why did they flee? The mystery of places humanity abandoned. Introduction: the call of the abyss and the fate of dead cities. Silence is something most of us rarely truly experience. In our modern world, we are surrounded by the constant hum of electricity, the distant roar of traffic, the incessant murmur of human connections. But there is a different kind of silence. A silence that is not the absence of sound, but the presence of something missing. It is the silence of a city that should be alive, but whose heart has stopped beating. Imagine walking down an avenue where the asphalt is slowly being torn apart by tree roots that grow without asking permission. Imagine looking at the windows of 20-story buildings and seeing no reflection of life, only the dark emptiness of apartments that guard, under layers of dust, the remnants of lives interrupted in the blink of an eye. What you are about to witness today is not just a documentary about ruins. It is a deep investigation into the fragility of human civilization. What makes an entire people abandon the place they call home? What forces thousands of people to leave behind their family photos, their clothes, their pets, and their memories, fleeing into the unknown with nothing but the clothes on their backs? Was it fear of an invisible enemy, like radiation that poisons the very air we breathe? Was it the fury of ancient gods who decided that humanity's time in that place had expired? Or was it something even more sinister, a force lurking in the shadows that makes human permanence unbearable? Around our globe, there are places that seem to have been excised from reality. Places that were once the pinnacle of progress and luxury and today are merely skeletons of concrete and stone being devoured by nature. In Ukraine, the deserted streets of Pripyat watch us with the coldness of an era that cannot be undone. In Cambodia, the ruins of Angkor Wat tell the story of a colossal empire that, despite all its wealth and military power, could not escape oblivion. In Portugal, we dive into initiatic wells that seem like portals to another dimension, where esotericism and mystery merge with reality. And on the coast of America, the enigma of Roanoke continues to echo, asking the wind what happened to the souls that vanished without leaving a single trace of blood or struggle. We are living in an era where we feel invincible, protected by our technology and smart cities. But the truth is that we are just one disaster away from total abandonment. What happened to these places could happen to any metropolis today. This video is an invitation for you to stare into the abyss. If you are fascinated by the inexplicable, if you feel that chill down your spine when seeing a door slamming in an empty hallway, or if you simply question the secrets that governments and official history try to bury, you've come to the right channel. Before we move on to the first secret on this terrifying list, I need you to make a decision. The knowledge we are going to share here is heavy. It changes the way you view the safety of your own home. If you're ready for this journey, subscribe now, turn on all notifications, and leave your like, because the YouTube algorithm chose you to receive this truth today. Don't ignore this sign. Often, abandonment does not happen gradually. It is not a slow and predictable decline. In many of the cases we will explore, the end came like a bolt from a clear blue sky. It was sudden. It was violent. It was definitive. In Pripyat, the tables were still set for dinner. In the schools, notebooks were open to the lesson of the day. Life was paused, but the world kept turning. Why did these people never return? Why, even decades later, does fear still prevent any brave soul from trying to repopulate these spaces? Was the Black Bird of Chernobyl just a myth? Or did it really hover over the Plant S towers as an omen that the apocalypse had arrived for that city? And what about the island of the dolls in Mexico, where decomposing plastic seems to come alive under the moonlight, whispering the names of those who dare to land on its shores? On this journey, we will analyze the evidence, listen to the accounts of the few survivors, and confront the biblical prophecies that seem to have predicted modern tragedies with pinpoint accuracy. We will connect the dots between the fall of a star called Wormwood in the Book of Revelation and the explosion of reactor number 4 in Ukraine. We will investigate whether the Knights Templar really transported the Holy Grail through tunnels that today lie empty and forgotten in Sintra. Each chapter of this video has been meticulously researched to offer you the most complete and disturbing view of the places humanity abandoned. Prepare yourself, for we are going to venture into jungles where time has stopped, walk through ghost cities where radiation still bites the skin, and navigate canals where the supernatural is the only law. The question that lingers and that I want you to keep in mind throughout the entire video is this: if you were there at the moment the panic began, would you have run to save your life, or would you have stayed to discover what was happening? Curiosity is what drives us, but in these places, curiosity was exactly what sealed the fate of many. History is written by the victors, but silence is guarded by the forgotten. And today, we are going to give voice to that silence. We will open the doors of houses where no one has entered for 40 years. We will look at the altars of gods abandoned by their own faithful. And we will try to understand if our destiny as a species is, eventually, to leave behind everything we know. Don't leave. What you will see in the next few minutes will challenge your logic and test your nerves. We will begin with the place that redefined the concept of exclusion zone. A place where the future died in 1986 and where the present is just a distorted shadow of what was once a nation's dream. The countdown to the truth has begun. The algorithm brought us here, and now the responsibility to know what happened is yours. Let's plunge into the darkness to find the light of the facts that were left behind. Stay tuned, because every detail, every image, and every word in this script was crafted so you don't miss a single second. Your attention retention is what allows us to keep bringing these mysteries to light. Comment now, "I'm ready," if you have the courage to face what comes next. Let's unravel together the mystery of the places forsaken by men and perhaps by the gods themselves. The journey begins now. Chapter 1, Pripyat, the tomorrow that died in yesterday. To understand the true horror of Pripyat, you must first understand what it represented. It was not just a city. It was a prototype of the future. Founded in 1970 in the heart of the former Soviet Union, Pripyat was designed to be the city of tomorrow. It was here that the brightest minds of nuclear engineering lived with their families, surrounded by luxuries that the rest of the Soviet population could only dream of. There were Olympic swimming pools, music schools, vibrant cultural centers, and well-kept gardens. It was a young city with an average age of only 26 years. Children played in the parks while their parents operated what they believed to be the safest energy on the planet. But on an April dawn in 1986, the dream turned into a radioactive nightmare that would freeze that place in time forever. Today, walking through Pripyat is like walking through a horror movie set that never rolled the end credits. Nature has not only reclaimed the city, it is devouring it aggressively. Trees grow through the concrete of balconies, roots destroy the floors of schools, and moss covers the monuments to socialism. But what truly chills the blood is not what nature has done, but what humans left behind. Entering one of the abandoned apartments, you find scenes that defy logic. Tables still set with ceramic plates, waiting for a meal that was never served. School notebooks open to math lessons that were never completed. Porcelain dolls fallen in the corners of rooms, their eyes seeming to follow you as you walk. Why did they take nothing? Why did the government lie to those 50,000 people, telling them they would return in 3 days when they knew the land would be cursed for at least 20,000 years? There is a disturbing theory that circulates in the darkest corners of the internet and among survivors who still have the courage to speak. They say the evacuation of Pripyat was not just a safety measure, but a massive social experiment. While reactor number 4 spewed a column of blue fire and radioactive material into the atmosphere, the population was kept in the dark for 36 hours. Children continued to play in the streets while the silver dust rain fell upon their heads. What was the government testing? How long can the human body endure before collapsing under the weight of invisible particles? The rush of the final evacuation, carried out in less than 4 hours by 1,000 buses, left behind secrets still locked in the vaults of the KGB's basements beneath the city. Over the years, Pripyat has become the ultimate destination for what we call stalkers, urban explorers who risk their health and freedom to illegally enter the exclusion zone. They report phenomena that science cannot explain. Strange lights floating above the cooling towers of the plant. Shadows moving through the corridors of Pripyat's hospital, where the heroic firefighters were taken on the night of the explosion. Some of these shadows, according to reports, do not have human form. Could radiation alter the perception of reality, or did the tragedy open a rift in a place that should have remained closed? And here comes the most chilling detail. Pripyat's amusement park, the famous yellow Ferris wheel, which never officially operated, is today the ultimate symbol of the disaster. It was supposed to be inaugurated during the May 1st celebrations, just 5 days after the accident. Today, it creaks under Ukraine's cold wind, emitting a metallic sound that resembles a lament. They say that on certain nights, the Ferris wheel begins to turn slowly, even without power and against the direction of the wind. Are they the ghosts of the children who never had the chance to ride it? Or is it the residual energy of such a catastrophic event that the very fabric of time was damaged? Have you ever stopped to think about what you would take if you had only 10 minutes to leave your home and never return? In Pripyat, people chose what was essential: documents, some clothes, and a little food. They left behind gold, family heirlooms, their lives. But what they truly left was their soul. Today, the city is a lifeless body that still refuses to rot completely. The air in Pripyat is heavy, saturated with the smell of mold, oxidized iron, and something else, a smell that stalkers describe as the smell of time dying. Pause for a moment now and look around you. Imagine that in 3 hours, everything you see will be contaminated and you will never again be able to touch anything you own. How would you feel? Leave your answer in the comments below. I want to know who here would have the presence of mind to save what truly matters. If you're enjoying this deep immersion, don't forget to check if your subscription is still active, as YouTube often unsubscribes people from channels that deal with sensitive topics like this. Pripyat is not just an abandoned city, it is a warning. A constant reminder that our greatest strength, control over the atom, is also our greatest weakness. As you look at the images of those empty classrooms, remember that beneath the contaminated soil there are tunnels and laboratories that were never fully mapped. What was the Soviet Union really doing in Chernobyl besides producing energy? Some say the plant was nearly a facade for the colossal Duga radar, the Russian woodpecker, a massive structure that sought not only to detect missiles, but according to theories to control mines and the global climate through radio frequencies. If that is true, the Chernobyl disaster was not an accident, but sabotage to prevent something much greater. With every step we take into Pripyat's history, the questions outweigh the answers. How can a city be evacuated so quickly and yet leave behind so many clues of everyday life? Why do the animals that now inhabit the exclusion zone seem to be thriving, despite carrying mutation levels that should be fatal? Is life adapting to what we ourselves created, preparing the world for an era in which humanity will no longer have a place? Stay tuned, because what we will uncover in the next chapter goes beyond science and enters the realm of millennial prophecies. We will understand why the name of this city was written in sacred books long before the first brick was laid. If you thought Pripyat was terrifying, wait until you see the biblical connection we are about to reveal. The disaster of 1986 was only the beginning of something that was already destined to happen. Here's the full translation of Chapter 2 into English, keeping the same eerie and immersive tone as your original text. Chapter 2. The Blackbird. The omen of the apocalypse. If Pripyat is the dead body of an era, the blackbird of Chernobyl is the spirit that came to claim its soul. But what exactly is this entity that many swear they saw in the days leading up to the greatest nuclear catastrophe in history? For many scientists, it was nothing more than collective hysteria caused by the stress of working at the plant. For conspiracy theorists, it was a military experiment. But for those who saw its red eyes and felt the icy wind of its wings, the blackbird was a final warning, a messenger of destruction, sent by forces that operate beyond our three-dimensional comprehension. Imagine you are a worker at reactor number 4 in mid-April 1986. The shift is exhausting. The Soviet government's pressure for productivity is suffocating. Suddenly, as you look to the top of one of the plant's chimneys, you see something that should not exist. A humanoid silhouette more than 2 meters tall, but with no visible head, only 2 red eyes, glowing like embers, emerging directly from a dark winged trunk. Workers' reports indicate that, in the weeks before the disaster, dozens of people began having terrible nightmares and receiving anonymous phone calls that contained only static and distant screams. Many of these men were the first to die on the night of the explosion. Was the blackbird a biological creature or a crisis apparition, a physical manifestation of the impending disaster? This phenomenon is not isolated. For scholars of the unexplained, the blackbird of Chernobyl is the dark twin of the infamous Mothman, the winged man who terrorized Point Pleasant, West Virginia, before the collapse of the Silver Bridge in 1967. The similarity is disturbing. In both cases, a winged creature with red eyes appears before a technological tragedy that results in massive loss of life. Are we dealing with an interdimensional entity that feeds on suffering, or one that somehow tries to warn us about catastrophic failures in our own creations? Some say the blackbird did not cause the disaster, but that it was drawn to the immense energy about to be released, like a moth to a flame. The mystery deepens when we analyze the accounts of those who survived the night of the fire. While firefighters battled the impossible blaze on the reactor's roof, several reported seeing the creature circling the pillar of blue light rising toward the sky. They described a sensation of paralysis and a cold that penetrated their bones. even while standing just meters away from a nuclear fire of thousands of degrees. Was the blackbird a protective entity trying to contain the radiation, or a reaper celebrating the harvest of souls to come? But the blackbird did not vanish after the explosion. There are secret records from helicopter pilots who, months later during the construction of the first sarcophagus, claimed their compasses, and electronic equipment inexplicably failed whenever a giant shadow crossed their path. The Soviet government, obsessed with secrecy and the image of control, ordered all such reports suppressed and sent men to psychiatric hospitals if they continued to speak of monsters in the sky. The state's forced silence only fueled the legend, turning the blackbird into a symbol that the Chernobyl disaster was not merely an engineering accident but a predestined event written in the stars and observed by sentinels of the shadows. And now I ask you a question that will keep you awake at night. Do you believe destiny can be avoided? If those workers had heeded the warnings and stopped the reactor tests, would the blackbird have left, or was the disaster a debt humanity had to pay regardless? The presence of this creature suggests that we live in a world where our science is only a thin layer of ice over a deep ocean of supernatural mysteries. Before we move on to the terrifying biblical connection mentioned in the introduction, I want you to pause and think. Have you ever felt that something bad was about to happen? Have you ever had a premonition or seen something no one else saw? If so, share your story in the comments. Your account might become the subject of one of our next videos. And if you want to help this channel continue bringing high production investigations, click the thanks button below the video. Your support is what allows us to remain independent against official narratives. Looking at satellite photos from that time, some analysts claim it is possible to see inexplicable dark spots near the site of the explosion. If the blackbird was a warning, it was the clearest warning humanity ever received that we were playing with forces we do not understand. Chernobyl was the first major blow to the ego of modernity, and the blackbird was the signature that we were not alone that night. It is the reminder that even in a world of atoms and electrons, ancient legends still have teeth. Stay tuned because the next chapter will connect everything you've seen so far. We will leave the realm of urban legends and enter the realm of sacred prophecies. How did the name Chernobyl appear in the Bible millennia ago? And what does the star wormwood have to do with Ukraine's contaminated soil? The answer is more direct and terrifying than you imagine. The blackbird was only the first sign of a seal that was broken. Here's the full translation of Chapter 3 into English, keeping the same dramatic and prophetic tone as your original text. Chapter 3, the star wormwood, the nuclear apocalypse in the Bible. So far, we have spoken of human failures and shadow creatures. But what if I told you that the disaster that paralyzed the world in 1986 was not just a newspaper headline, but the fulfillment of a prophecy written nearly 2 millennia ago? Prepare yourself, because what we are about to analyze is what many theologians and survivors consider the ultimate proof that we are living in prophetic times. We are going to talk about the third trumpet of Revelation and the star that changed humanity's destiny. In the book of Revelation, chapter 8, verses 10 and 11, the Apostle John describes a terrifying vision. The third angel sounded his trumpet, and a great star, blazing like a torch, fell from the sky on a third of the rivers and on the springs of water. The name of the star is Wormwood. A third of the waters turned bitter, and many people died from the waters that had become bitter. For centuries, scholars tried to understand what this blazing star that poisons the waters could be. Was it a meteor? A weapon of war? But the answer was hidden in a linguistic detail that most of the world ignored until April 26, 1986. Here's the fact that will blow your mind. The Ukrainian word for wormwood is precisely Chernobyl. Wormwood is a plant known for its extremely bitter taste and toxic properties if consumed in excess. In the region of Ukraine, this plant grows abundantly and is popularly called Chernobyl. When reactor number 4 exploded, it launched into the atmosphere a column of fire and radiation that glowed with bluish and reddish tones, appearing for all intents and purposes like a star blazing like a torch falling upon the earth. But the coincidence does not stop at the name. The prophecy says that the star would poison the waters, making them bitter and deadly. After the disaster, radiation spread through groundwater and the river system of the region, including the Pripyat River and the Kiev Reservoir. Thousands of square kilometers of watersheds were contaminated, rendering the water unfit for human consumption and killing aquatic life. For the locals who knew the biblical meaning of wormwood, the shock was immediate. They did not see merely an industrial accident. They saw the sounding of the third trumpet. They saw the beginning of the end. Let us analyze the details together. The Bible mentions that many people died from the waters. Although the official Soviet death toll was minimized for decades, modern estimates indicate that hundreds of thousands of people suffered and died due to the consumption of food and water contaminated by radiation in the years that followed. Radiation is, in essence, a form of invisible bitterness, something you cannot see, smell, or feel at the moment, but which corrodes life from within, exactly like the biblical description of wormwood's poison. Could it be that John, in his vision on the island of Patmos, saw the ionizing glow of a nuclear reactor exploding and described it with the only words he had at the time? For him, a blazing star. For us, a uranium core in meltdown. I want you to stop now and write wormwood in the comments if you believe that science and spirituality are far more connected than we are told. And if you think this kind of analysis makes sense, share this video in your WhatsApp or Facebook group. The world needs to know that the signs are before our eyes, but only those who are attentive can see them. Also, check if the subscription button is still gray. If it's red, you're missing the next signs we are going to reveal here on the channel. But there is another level to this prophecy. Many believe that Chernobyl was only the first seal in a series of events that will lead to the total destruction of other places destined for abandonment. If the star wormwood has already fallen, what comes next? The story of Pripyat teaches us that when destiny decides to act, no bunker, technology, or army can prevent it. The city was evacuated on a Sunday, the Lord's Day, reinforcing even more the religious symbolism for those who lost everything. What makes this connection even more disturbing is the fact that Pripyat was a proudly atheist city, a symbol of Soviet materialism that rejected any form of religion. To see the city's name directly linked to a millennia-old biblical prophecy was the final irony. For the regime that tried to erase God from history, the star wormwood did not only poison the water, it destroyed the arrogance of an empire that believed it had total control over creation. But desolation is not limited to radiation and modern times. While Ukraine struggles against the invisible on the other side of the world in the dense, humid jungles of Cambodia, there exists another city that was abandoned by the gods. If Chernobyl was the punishment for soulless science, what caused the fall of Angkor Wat? How did 1 million people simply vanish from a stone metropolis without a single war or epidemic being recorded? In the next chapter, we will travel to the heart of the jungles to discover why the stone gods of Angkor closed their eyes to their faithful. Prepare yourself because Cambodia's mystery is as dense as Pripyat's radiation, and the answers may be hidden in blood rituals and gods who demanded the total abandonment of their greatest temple. Here's the full translation of Chapter 4 into English, keeping the same immersive and mysterious tone as your original text. Chapter 4. Angkor Wat. The empire devoured by the jungle, we leave behind the radioactive cold of Ukraine and plunge into the suffocating, humid heat of Southeast Asia. Here in the heart of Cambodia lies Angkor Wat, the largest religious structure ever built by human hands. But do not be deceived by the beauty of its sculptures or the grandeur of its towers that imitate the sacred Mount Meru. Angkor Wat is not just a temple. It is the mortal remains of a metropolis that, at its height, housed nearly 1 million people. While London and Paris were little more than medieval villages, Angkor was the center of the world, a marvel of hydraulic engineering and military power. And then in 1431, silence fell upon the city. 1 million people simply vanished, leaving behind stone cities that would be devoured by the jungle for centuries. The question that has haunted archaeologists for generations is why? How could such an advanced civilization, capable of diverting rivers and raising mountains of sandstone, collapse so completely? Traditional theories speak of invasions by the Thai army or devastating epidemics. But recent evidence suggests something much deeper and more disturbing. The abandonment of Angkor was not merely a military defeat. It was a spiritual divorce. The city was built to be the link between mortals and the gods, and when that link was broken, the Khmer people felt that the ground beneath their feet had become cursed. The great architect of Angkor Wat, King Suryavarman II, conceived this place not only as a temple but as his own mausoleum. He wanted to be buried at the exact center of the main tower, at a point where a beam of sunlight coming through an opening in the roof would illuminate his sarcophagus, ensuring his eternal divinity. But destiny had other plans. Suryavarman II died in a distant military campaign in what is now Vietnam. His body was never recovered. The central tomb of Angkor Wat remained empty. For the Khmer people, this was the definitive sign of chaos. The king, who was supposed to be the living god, died as a mere mortal, and his soul never found its way home. Soon after the king's death, the region's climate began to behave erratically, exactly like the biblical prophecies we saw in Chernobyl. Extreme droughts lasting decades were followed by monsoons so violent that they destroyed the complex system of canals that fed the city. Without water for rice crops and with infrastructure in ruins, the population began to see natural disasters as the wrath of the gods. They believed Angkor had been disinherited by the divine. And when a place loses its spiritual soul, stones can no longer sustain men. Imagine the scene: thousands of peasants, merchants, and priests, looking at the same towers that once symbolized hope, now seeing in them monuments to failure. The abandonment was massive. They left behind their wooden houses, which quickly rotted in the tropical climate, and fled south, founding what is now Phnom Penh. What remained were the stone temples, silent sentinels waiting for a redemption that never came. The forest trees, like the strangler fig, began to climb the walls, their roots acting like giant fingers squeezing and crushing the sandstone, as if the earth itself were trying to erase the memory of that human arrogance. Walking today through Angkor's corridors, you can still see the carvings of the apsaras, the celestial dancers, whose enigmatic smiles seem to guard the secret of that exodus. Some modern explorers report that, at dusk, it is possible to hear the metallic sound of tools striking stone and the murmur of crowds, as if the city were trapped in a ghostly repetition of its golden age. Could Angkor Wat be a place where time folded, keeping the spirits of the ancient Khmer Empire imprisoned in an eternal wait for the king who never returned? I want you to write here in the comments, destiny or accident? Do you think Angkor fell because of climate change or because the gods truly withdrew their protection? Your comment helps YouTube understand that this video is generating deep debate and makes it reach more people interested in history and mystery. And if you enjoy these journeys through time, make sure your like is guaranteed. That is the fuel that keeps our exploration going. The mystery of Angkor teaches us a valuable lesson. No wall is high enough, and no empire is rich enough to resist when the connection with the sacred or with nature is broken. Just like in Pripyat, Angkor became a monument to what if. What if the water system had worked? What if the king had been buried? History is made of these unanswered questions. But while Cambodia's jungles keep secrets under the moss, in Europe there is a place designed precisely to hide humanity's greatest secret. If in Angkor Wat men fled from divine wrath, in Portugal a man used his fortune to create a labyrinth that would attract the gods themselves. Let us leave the Asian jungles and land in Sintra at the Canto da Regaleira. What happens when an initiate of secret orders decides to build a portal to the center of the earth? And what do the Knights Templar have to do with a well that has never seen a drop of water? Prepare yourself, because the next chapter will take you underground, into a place where every statue and every tunnel is a code to be deciphered. We will discover whether the Holy Grail is hidden in Portugal. The mystery is only beginning to deepen. Continues to Chapter 5, Canto da Regaleira, the Templars' Portal. Chapter 5, Canto da Regaleira, the Templars' Portal. We leave behind Cambodia's devouring jungles and land in one of Europe's most enigmatic and symbol-laden places, the village of Sintra in Portugal. Amid glittering palaces and romantic gardens rises the Canto da Regaleira, a Gothic mansion that seems to have been pulled straight out of a lucid dream or an alchemical nightmare. This place was not merely abandoned in the traditional sense. It was designed to be a spiritual labyrinth, a theme park for the occult. But what happens when a man with unlimited fortune and access to forbidden knowledge decides to build a stone map to the center of the soul? The modern history of Regaleira begins with a man named Carvalho Monteiro, known as Monteiro of the Millions. At the end of the 19th century, he transformed this old estate into a monument to his obsession with Freemasonry, the Knights Templar, and Rosicrucianism. Yet as you walk through the gardens, you realize Monteiro was not simply decorating his home. He was encoding something. Every statue of pagan gods, every Latin inscription, every artificial grotto is an invitation to a journey most people fear to take. Canto da Regaleira is a mansion that remained uninhabited for decades after its creator's death, as if the building itself were waiting for a new master who could read its secrets. The crown jewel of this mystery is the initiation well. Imagine a 9-story tower, but instead of rising toward the sky, it plunges 27 meters into the bowels of the earth. There is no water in this well. Instead, there is a spiral staircase with 139 steps, divided into 9 landings that allude to the 9 circles of Dante's Inferno. the 9 sectors of purgatory and the 9 heavens of paradise. What happened at the bottom of this abyss? Accounts from occult historians suggest that initiates entered through secret passages, blindfolded, and were guided through total darkness to the bottom of the well, where they were expected to find the light. On the floor of the stone abyss lies the cross of the Order of Christ, the symbol of the successors of the Knights Templar in Portugal. Why would a 19th century businessman spend a fortune recreating the rituals of medieval warrior monks? The answer may be more shocking than we imagine. Some researchers claim Montero not only admired the Templars but possessed original documents of the order indicating that the soil of Sintra was a point of convergence of telluric energies, a natural portal that the ancients used to communicate with other dimensions. But the mystery deepens in the tunnels. From the bottom of the initiation well, underground labyrinths branch out, connecting to chapels, grottos, and artificial lakes. Some of these tunnels are so extensive that, according to local legend, they could stretch for kilometers, linking Regalera to ancient convents and Templar fortresses in the surrounding hills. What was Montero searching for in these tunnels? Was he a guardian of something left behind by the Templars when they were persecuted by the Catholic Church? Here enters the most viral connection of this mystery, the Holy Grail. If the Templars truly found Christ's chalice in Jerusalem and brought it to Europe, Portugal would have been their safest refuge. The first king of Portugal granted lands to the order with seals containing anagrams such as Por tu o Graal, through you, the Grail. Could Cana Regalera be the final hiding place of this sacred artifact? In the garden there is a stone bench, bench 515, bearing the image of a woman holding a chalice. For an initiate, this is not decoration, it is a signal. I want you to do an exercise now. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine yourself descending those 139 steps in absolute darkness. What would you feel upon reaching the bottom and seeing the Templar cross illuminated by a single torch? Leave your comment. I would descend or I would be afraid. This engagement is vital for YouTube to show this video to other seekers of truth. And if you are fascinated by these hidden codes, click the link in the description to become a channel member and gain access to exclusive documents on these topics. Regalera is an abandoned place that refuses to die. Today, thousands of tourists walk through it, but most see only beautiful stones. They do not realize they are walking over a system of tunnels that may hold the key to humanity's lost knowledge. Montero died in 1920 and took the secrets of the well to his grave. Since then, the mansion has passed through several owners, but none have fully deciphered what Montero of the Millions truly intended. Just as Pripyat was abandoned by the poison of science and Angkor Wat by the fury of nature, Count de Regalera was abandoned by time, yet remains a sentinel of the spirit. It reminds us that the visible world is only a shell, and that true history is written underground far from the eyes of the profane. But while in Portugal we search for a sacred chalice on a distant island in North America, a far bloodier mystery awaits us. A mystery where no stones, no tombs remain. Only a single word carved into wood. Have you heard of the Roanoke colony? 115 people vanished without leaving a single trace of struggle, a single bone, or a drop of blood. What makes an entire settlement evaporate on an isolated island? In the next chapter, we will investigate the greatest cold case in American history. What does the word Croatoan really mean? Prepare yourself because what happened in Roanoke may be proof that our world contains fissures through which people can simply fall and never return. Continues to Chapter 6, Roanoke, the colony that evaporated. Here's the full translation of Chapter 6 into English, keeping the same suspenseful, viral documentary style as your original text. Chapter 6, Roanoke, the colony that vanished into thin air. Imagine yourself in the year 1590. You have crossed the Atlantic Ocean on a perilous months-long journey, facing storms and disease, eager to reunite with your family. You are John White, the governor of England's first attempt to establish a permanent home in the New World, Roanoke Island. 3 years earlier, you had to return to England in search of urgent supplies, leaving behind your daughter, your son-in-law, and your granddaughter, little Virginia Dare, the first English baby born in the Americas. For years, your heart raced at the thought of seeing them again. But when you set foot on the beach that August morning, what you find is not hugs or cries of joy. What you find is the most absolute and terrifying silence a human being can endure. The Roanoke colony was not just empty. It seemed to have been erased from existence. There were no signs of battle, no bodies lying on the ground, no traces of blood, no ashes from fire. The houses have been carefully dismantled, as if the colonists had all the time in the world to leave. But where and why? The only clue left behind was a single word carved clearly into one of the palisade posts. Croatoan, 3 syllables that would become the greatest nightmare of American archaeology and the centerpiece of 1,000 conspiracy theories. Before leaving, John White had agreed on a signal with the colonists. If they were forced to abandon the site due to imminent danger or attack, they were to carve a Maltese cross above the name of their destination. White desperately searched every inch of that wood, but there was no cross. This suggested the departure had been voluntary and peaceful. Yet 115 people, men, women, and children, do not simply move without leaving traces. Why would they abandon the defenses of the colony to plunge into an unknown and hostile land? Here the official story begins to fragment, giving way to deeper mystery. Croatoan was the name of a nearby island, today known as Hatteras, inhabited by a native tribe of the same name who were considered friendly. It would be logical to think the colonists sought refuge with them due to extreme hunger. But when later expeditions tried to find them, there was never a concrete report of Europeans living among the natives. Generations later, stories emerged of natives with blue eyes and fair hair who claimed their ancestors knew how to read books. But no physical proof, no significant European artifacts were found for centuries. But what if the answer is far darker? Some theorists suggest Roanoke was the victim of a phenomenon modern science still refuses to accept, a time vortex or a tear in the fabric of reality. Roanoke Island lies in a region of unpredictable ocean currents and atmospheric conditions. Navigators of that era reported strange lights descending over the forests, and voices coming from the sea where no ships were present. Could it be that the 115 colonists crossed an involuntary portal transported to another dimension or another time? This would explain why, despite massive archaeological excavations, no skeletons of the colonists have ever been found on the island or nearby. Another viral theory gaining traction on YouTube focuses on the occult. They say the word Croatoan was not merely the name of an island or a tribe, but the name of an ancient spirit, a forest demon that demanded sacrifices to allow intruders to remain on the land. According to this legend, the colonists did not flee. They were consumed. Fear of this entity may have caused John White to be prevented by supernatural storms from seeking his family on Croatoan Island, forcing him to return to England without ever discovering the truth. I want you to pause now and think, if you were John White and saw that word carved into the wood, what would go through your mind? Leave your comment. It was supernatural, or they blended in. YouTube's algorithm values videos that generate real historical discussions, so your opinion can help this video reach researchers and historians. And if you want to see more episodes about mass disappearances, subscribe and hit the like button right now. Modern science tried to solve the case in 2020, when archaeologists found fragments of English pottery at sites far from the coast, suggesting the colonists split into small groups to survive. But this does not explain the absence of human remains. Where are the graves of the elderly? Where are the bones of the children? A population of more than 100 people leaves biological traces for centuries. In Roanoke, the soil seems to have swallowed any evidence that Europeans ever set foot there. The word Croatoan continued to appear in sinister moments of American history. It is said to have been found written in the diary of explorer Amelia Earhart after her disappearance in 1937, and even in the cell of author Edgar Allan Poe before his mysterious death. Could this word be a universal code for absolute disappearance? A trigger that, when spoken or written, signals that a life or a civilization has reached its predetermined end. Roanoke teaches us that emptiness can be more frightening than confirmed death. But while in North Carolina the mystery is the absence of people, in Mexico the mystery is the presence of thousands of plastic eyes that seem to watch your every move. Let us leave the myths of Roanoke and travel to the heart of Xochimilco's canals. In the next chapter, we will land on the island of the dolls. What happens when a man tries to protect himself from a ghost using dead toys? And why does the spirit of a drowned girl still demand tributes from those who dare to approach? Brace yourself, because the journey is about to become far more visual and disturbing. Continues to Chapter 7, The Island of the Dolls, where plastic comes to life. Here's the full translation of Chapter 7 into English, keeping the same eerie, immersive, viral documentary style. Chapter 7, The Island of the Dolls, where plastic comes to life, imagines sailing through ancient canals, surrounded by dense vegetation that seems to close the path behind your boat. The air is heavy, carrying the smell of stagnant water and decaying plants. You are in Xochimilco, south of Mexico City, a place of stunning beauty that hides a secret so disturbing that even the bravest boatman avoids certain routes after sunset. Suddenly, among the willows and cypresses of a small artificial island, you begin to see faces. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of faces. But they are not human. They are broken glass eyes, plastic limbs hanging from rusty wires, and decapitated heads that seem to watch your every move. Welcome to the Isla de las Muñecas, the island of the dolls, the abandoned place where childhood innocence was twisted into an eternal nightmare. This place was not created by a cult or a macabre entertainment company. It was the work of a single man, Don Julian Santana Barrera. In the 1950s, Don Julian abandoned his family and his life in the city to live as a hermit on this small island. But why would someone choose total isolation in a swamp? Local legend says that shortly after his arrival, Don Julian found the body of a little girl drowned in the canals surrounding his property. Soon after, he found a doll floating in those same waters. Believing the doll belonged to the girl and that the object contained her spirit, he hung it on a tree as a sign of respect. But what began as a gesture of spiritual charity transformed over 50 years into a dark obsession that consumed his sanity and his life. Don Julian did not hang the dolls only to comfort the dead girl. He believed the island was haunted by a far more dangerous entity, La Llorona, the Weeping Woman, a legendary figure of Mexican folklore who wanders rivers in search of children to replace the one she drowned herself. For Don Julian, the dolls were soldiers. He believed the toys acted as talismans, protecting him from the fury of the evil spirit. But over time, the hermit himself began to report that the dolls came to life at night. He claimed to hear whispers from the trees, tiny footsteps on dry leaves, and the sound of children's laughter that turned into screams of agony. The dolls you see today are not new toys. They are remnants found in trash or traded for vegetables that Julian grew. They are covered in cobwebs, mold, and insect nests. Some have no eyes, others have holes where hearts should be. Mexico's sun and the humidity of the canals melted the plastic, creating expressions of pain and agony that look far too real to ignore. For those who visit the island, the sensation is not of being in a museum, but in a courtroom where the witnesses are forgotten toys, judging all who dare to invade their sanctuary. The most terrifying part of this story, however, is its ending. In 2001, after spending half a century surrounded by his sentinel dolls, Don Julian was found dead. The place where his body was discovered? The exact same spot where he claimed to have found the drowned girl 50 years earlier. The official cause was a heart attack, but locals have a different version. They say the dolls, possessed by the spirits Julian tried to control, finally decided it was time for their creator to join them in the deep darkness of the canals. Since Julian's death, the island has been officially abandoned, but it has never been empty. Today, it is one of the most famous destinations of dark tourism. Tourists from all over the world bring their own dolls as offerings, believing this will protect them from the curse. But the reports continue. Visitors claim their cameras inexplicably stop working, but they feel invisible hands pulling at their clothes, and that if you stare at one of the dolls for too long, you may see its eyes move to return your gaze. Is this the residual energy of Don Julian, or has the island become a magnet for lost souls unable to cross to the other side? I want to challenge you, the viewer. If you had to spend a night alone on the island of the dolls, without a flashlight and without a phone, what would you bring to protect yourself? Leave your comment. I would bring. If we reach 5,000 comments, I will make a special video investigating the darkest legends of Xochimilco. And don't forget to hit the like button if this chapter gave you chills. The algorithm needs to know you enjoy content that tests your courage. The Island of the Dolls shows us how isolation and grief can create monuments of horror that endure far beyond the lives of their creators. Just as Pripyat is a monument to radiation and Roanoke to disappearance, the Island of the Dolls is a monument to guilt and fear of the unknown. Don Julian tried to turn ugliness into protection, but ended up creating a place where the past refuses to be buried. But while in Mexico, the dolls whisper, on a small island in the Caribbean, the sound that echoes is volcanic silence. What happens when a modern capital is buried alive by ash and mud in a matter of minutes? In the next chapter, we will visit Plymouth, the city that became a modern Pompeii, where houses are nothing but rooftops sticking out of the ground, and where danger still roars in the nearby mountains. Prepare to see how nature can erase our technology in the blink of an eye. The final journey is beginning. Continues to Chapter 8, Plymouth, the city buried alive. Chapter 8. Plymouth, a modern Pompeii of the Caribbean. So far, our journey has taken us through radioactive ghost towns, jungles that devour empires, and islands where the supernatural dictates the rules. But our eighth and final destination places us face to face with the rawest and most unstoppable power of our planet, the force from within the Earth itself. Imagine a vibrant capital, a Caribbean paradise with colonial architecture, luxury hotels, banks, and a population of 4,000 people living the tropical dream. We are on the island of Montserrat in the year 1995. In an instant, paradise was transformed into a gray purgatory. Plymouth, the jewel of the Caribbean, was not merely abandoned. It was buried alive. Today, it is the only place in the modern world where you can walk across the rooftops of 3-story buildings, because the ground beneath your feet is actually a layer of 10 meters of solidified volcanic ash and mud. The tragedy began when the Surrey Hills volcano, dormant for centuries and considered nothing more than a picturesque mountain, decided to awaken. It was not a single quick explosion like in the movies. It was a slow martyrdom. Between 1995 and 1997, a series of catastrophic eruptions unleashed pyroclastic flows, clouds of superheated gas and rock traveling at hundreds of kilometers per hour directly over the city. What was not instantly burned was buried under layers, rivers of boiling mud that swallowed entire streets. The residents of Plymouth had to make the hardest decision of their lives: flee to the north of the island with only the clothes on their backs or perish under a rain of fire. They fled, and Plymouth became an absolute exclusion zone, a 20th century Pompeii frozen at the height of the information age. What makes Plymouth so disturbing is its interrupted modernity. In Pompeii, we see stone ruins from 2,000 years ago. In Plymouth, we see typewriters, 1990s computers, Ford cars, and soda bottles still sealed all beneath a suffocating crust of ash. Entering, illegally or with escort, the houses that still have their upper parts visible, the scene is one of deep regret. Children's shoes at the doorway, dishes in the sink, newspapers dated from the week of the eruption. It is silent testimony that no one believed the abandonment would be permanent. They thought they would return in a few days. But the volcano never stopped. To this day, Surrey Hills remains active, reminding the few inhabitants left on the island that nature is the sole owner of that land. But there is a psychological phenomenon that arises in places like this: dark tourism. Why do thousands of people travel from all over the world to photograph Plymouth's ruins? Why are we drawn to scenes of total destruction? Experts say visiting Plymouth is a form of memento mori, a reminder that our own cities, no matter how technological, are vulnerable. Plymouth is a mirror. It makes us ask, if tomorrow the ground beneath New York, Tokyo, or Sao Paulo decided to open, what would remain of us beyond silicon and plastic under the dust? Today, the city is a place of brutal contrasts. The vibrant green of Caribbean vegetation tries to reclaim the edges, but the center of Plymouth remains a gray, sterile desert. No birds sing here. The only sound is the wind blowing through the broken windows of hospitals and schools, creating a whistle the locals call the cry of the city. They say that on nights of light volcanic activity, it is possible to see Plymouth's lights shining beneath the ash, not electric lights, but inexplicable glow suggesting that something of the energy of those 4,000 people is still trapped under the weight of the mountain. We are reaching the end of our exploration, and I want to know from you, if you could save only one single thing from your home before it was buried by a volcano, what would it be? Write in the comments, I would save your object. This type of interaction is what makes YouTube understand that our content generates emotional value. And if you believe humanity should stop trying to rebuild dangerous places, leave your like to support that vision. Your participation is what keeps this channel alive and monetized. Plymouth teaches us the final lesson about abandonment. Sometimes, there are no villains, no KGB conspiracies, and no curses from ancient gods. Sometimes the planet simply decides to reclaim what has always been its own. The capital of Montserrat is a reminder that our presence on Earth is conditional. We are tenants of a world that can evict us at any moment. And when the eviction comes, all that remains is silence and the questions we have tried to answer in this video. Here's the full translation of your conclusion into English, keeping the same dramatic and immersive tone. Conclusion: the legacy of ashes and the future of emptiness. On this long journey, we traveled from Pripyat to Plymouth, from Angkor Wat to Roanoke. We saw how radiation, faith, madness, and nature can erase entire civilizations. But after analyzing these 8 extraordinary places, a frightening truth emerges: abandoned places are not just the past. They are a glimpse of our future. Each of these sites was once the center of the world for those who lived there. They never believed they would become the subject of a video about mysteries and ruins. Why do these places fascinate us so much? Perhaps it is because, deep down, we know that the balance sustaining our lives is fragile. We like to stare into the abyss of these dead cities because it makes us feel alive, while at the same time preparing us for the inevitable. Abandonment is the ultimate proof that human history is a cycle of construction and forgetting. If Pripyat teaches us about the danger of our technology and the Island of the Dolls about the weight of our guilt, Plymouth teaches us about our insignificance before the cosmos. But the mystery does not end here. There are places we did not mention in this video because they are so secret that access to images is forbidden by international governments. Places abandoned not by disasters, but by something discovered underground. Something that should never have been disturbed. Do you want me to bring part 2 with these forbidden places? Then we have a goal. If this video reaches 50,000 likes and you subscribe now, I will release the investigation about the base that was abandoned in Antarctica after an inexplicable event in 2023. Thank you for walking with me through the shadows. The world is vast, mysterious, and full of voices that silence cannot contain. Protect your memories, take care of your home, and above all, never stop questioning the reality around you. I am your name channel, and I'll see you in the next mystery. Stay safe. If you can,